Season is finally freaking here, and I love it. Welcome to the Fantasy Cheat Sheet presented by Going for Two Live. You can find us on YouTube, Twitch, wherever you want to find us. Go like and subscribe. I got my two co-hosts. I don't want to make them wait any longer. First, we got Zach. Zach at the Big Pulaski. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good. I'm just glad it's September. I mean, it's been too long. It's been too long since our last show, and I'm just ready to watch some football.
All right. And last but not least, we got our new co-host who's going to be with us every Tuesday night for the rest of the season. We got our man Jordan Arsenault. How you doing, Jordan?
I'm good, man. Kind of to echo what Zach said. It's September, 2 days before the season starts. I'm just ready to get after it.
All right. It's nice to have you on board. And we are just going to jump right into the show. We're going to change the format a little bit for once the season starts. But for this week, we're going to the same old format. Our cheats of the week. We're going to have three each, and then we'll have the cheat of the week at the end. So to start off the show, Zach, I know that you are high on some of the guys on this team, but what do you have to say, mister, about the good old the Bears?
Well, first off, as a proud resident of this great city of Chicago, I will say that the team here is awful. It's going to suck. It's going to be a bottom five team in the league. There's no other way to put it. I'm sorry. You're going to have to watch the Packers win again, and you're going to be miserable. It's a lose-lose situation. But the important thing is people keep forgetting, hey, this team can suck on the field, but there can still be valuable fantasy producers on this team. And with a team like this specifically, they don't have a lot of mediocre weapons. They have a couple solid options at a couple different positions, and that's it. You have Darnell Mooney, who I think could finish roughly wide receiver 20 this year. He's going for fairly cheap in drafts. Cole Kmet, my favorite. I mean, I love him for what a bargain he is at the tight end position. Look, if that man got one touchdown last year, let alone a couple more, he would have been a top probably 6 to 8 tight end. But no, people are taking him outside the top 10 currently. Well, guess what? He's already had a touchdown this preseason. I'm thinking that's something to show that, hey, he's going to get red zone targets more this year. And if he gets a couple of those, I love him placing towards that top spot. Otherwise, you can't forget about David Montgomery. Justin Fields, we got to see it on the field to believe in it. And I think it's going to be a run first offense. So if it is a pass, it's either going to go to Mooney or Kmet. But for the most part, the workload's going to David Montgomery. And all three of these guys are treated like they're on the Bears, reasonably so. And you're able to get them for fairly cheap and relative to what they will do for your fantasy team. So, I hate the Bears. I think they'll suck on the field, but I love their top weapons in regards to fantasy football. Mike, Jordan, what are your guys' thoughts on the Chicago Bears' weapons for fantasy this year?
So I agree that as a fellow Packers fan, I believe that they're going to suck as well. But I think I'm wondering how much Khalil Herbert will eat into David Montgomery's workload a little bit going into this season. Uh, New coaching staff, so Montgomery kind of has to prove himself to the new coaching staff, and I'm wondering if Khalil Herbert isn't just a more explosive back. It seems like maybe he may eat a little bit. I mean, Montgomery will still be the starter. He'll get the bulk of the carries, but I just wonder how much that'll kind of hurt his value. He's dropping in drafts, so that he becomes a value in some of the drafts that I've been in over the last couple of days. But as far as the passing game goes, Cole Kmet, I like him as well as one of the later tight ends. If you don't get one of the top four, I like him a lot. Justin Fields is more of a two quarterback option for me. I don't like to wait that long at quarterback in most drafts, but Darnell Mooney definitely is somebody not no hardly any competition for targets in the receiving core. So they have a lot of guys, but none of them are really proven. He's proven that he can get to 1,000 yards. So I definitely think he can finish just from a sheer volume perspective. He can finish as a top 24 receiver for sure.
And Mike, what are your thoughts on those three guys?
So the first thing I want to do is I want to acknowledge what Jordan just mentioned, and that's the Khalil Herbert situation. I do think he's going to eat a tiny bit into it, but I don't think it's going to be massive. What I am interested in Montgomery, and me and Zach have talked dynasty plenty off season, is this is his contract year, and with the new coaching staff and the new system, trust me, Jordan, as a Chiefs fan, and I know you guys are Packers fans, but Zach has heard this all summer. Freaking Matt Nagy ruined everyone on that goddamn squad. So I'm trying to give everyone on that offense a pass. I'm trying to. But I think in the new NFL, I don't know if David Montgomery is going to be on the team next year. So I think later on in the year, depending on how the team's doing, and both of you guys said they're going to suck, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I could see that eating up a little bit later in the year as a tryout for Montgomery and Herbert to see, let's see what Herbert can do, or let's see what Montgomery do. I completely agree with Zach on Darnell Mooney. Zach, I like the guy. Who do they got? They got freaking Brian, half a can of Pringles from the Kansas City Chiefs, who didn't do anything. And then they go out and freaking draft Geriatric Jones, who's probably 35 years old by the time the season starts. I mean, he's the oldest freaking prospect that was in the draft, not just as a wide receiver, the draft. So those two I do believe have upside to. I do think that Montgomery can sneak into the top 20. I'm a Montgomery guy. There's another Chicago. There's a Chicago Bear diehard, Dave Kluge, in the Twitter world. Me and him have gone back and forth. He's not a Montgomery guy. I've had on stream, off stream, Canton arguments. Like, we were joking around about it in a Twitter chat the other day. So I do think he has the promise of doing that. Mooney for sure. Kmet, we all know this is his chance to break out if he's going to do it. But overall, the team's going to stink. But, Zach, do you have anything closing comments about this topic?
I get the concerns with Khalil Herbert. For me, I look at it as a contract year. Montgomery's going to want to get paid somewhere, even if it's not with Chicago. So I anticipate him just trying to get that bread somewhere, trying to put in that work and get paid. But, Darnell Mooney, he's getting drafted around the same spot as someone else. I believe he's on the Buffalo Bills. You want to tell us about him, Jordan?
Yeah, so Gabe Davis is somebody who I've been going back and forth with in my mind, and I don't have him in not one draft. I've been trying to get him at the beginning of the summer. He was going too early for me. Now I'm waiting too late. Like, it's just one of those things where I haven't been able to get on my team, even though I want a share or two of him. It's just one of those things where I don't know exactly where he should be as far as a good value. He hasn't really had the full workload of a number one receiver. Obviously, he's gotten 60, maybe about 63, 64 targets in each of the first two seasons he's had. Scored a bunch of touchdowns, so that's obviously good. He shows that upside. Now you can expect him to have his targets doubled. Well, we hope to have his targets doubled. Obviously, you lose Cole Beasley, you lose Emmanuel Sanders in that offense, so he kind of elevates. There's still Jamison Crowder, Isaiah McKenzie is somebody that's on the radar as well. Right now, he was slotted somewhere around wide receiver 24 according to Fantasy Pros ADP, so that's right around Amon St. Brown, the Allen Robinsons and stuff like that. If I'm looking for upside, I definitely take him over those guys. But as far as if you were looking for like a steady flow, I prefer Allen Robinson as somebody who agrees with Mike and that Matt Nagy ruined everybody. So I'm willing to give Allen Robinson a second chance with a much better offense and quarterback. So I'd rather take Allen Robinson there. But I'm just trying to figure out exactly what can we project for him, and if he can get to where people think he can be, then I think it wouldn't be a surprise for him to lead the league in touchdowns. He may not have a bunch of receptions, but in half PPR and non PPR, he would definitely be could be like a top 15, top 20 receiver. He has the potential to be. Where do you guys kind of sit on Gabe Davis and kind of the way things have been shaken out this summer?
You go first, Zach.
Uh, I wanna like him. You know, there's a lot of things where I wanna believe that it's true. We've had some exciting games. I see where the opportunity can be there for him. My issue is, well, there is the potential for all these touchdowns because obviously we know what Josh Allen is and we know what he can do on the field. I am just scared of the price that Gabriel Davis is at because right now with the you said I believe 24
Yeah,
roughly in that
yeah.
area, you know, I feel like that's me drafting him at his ceiling for this year rather than his floor. And usually when I'm drafting my wide receivers, I usually like to prioritize my other positions first. I know wide receiver is the deepest position, so I'm going to load up elsewhere and then fill up in the later rounds with receivers. And, you know, for him, say he was wide receiver 35 to 40, I would be eating him up all day because I'd love the upside of him, you know, climbing up those ranks. And yeah, he could break that, you know, that wide receiver 24 range, but I don't know how many guys I see him surpassing to really get up into that true top tier, and at his current price, you know, I just don't really have any shares outside of the leagues I had him in prior to this past year, you know? Mike, what are your thoughts on Gabe?
So the reason I wanted you to go first is because I'm about to have a little bit of a rant. It's not going to be very long, but it's a little bit of a rant. Both of you know that I'm a Chiefs fan. Gabe Davis, all this hype, is it deserved? Some of it's deserved, yes. I agree with Zach that I think he's going at his ceiling. Jordan, you mentioned two wide receivers. You mentioned ARSB, and you also mentioned Allen Robinson. To me, ARSB and him are about a tie, but I would 100% rather have Allen Robinson over Gabe Davis. I am worried about the Isaiah McKenzie eating into the role a little bit. I personally don't know if Jamison Crowder is going to do much, but here's the thing. Gabe Davis made all of this hype over one freaking game. Who was that game against? It was against the Chiefs with one of the one of the cruddiest defensive secondaries ever. 200 something yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns. And then all of a sudden, he is the greatest number 2 wide receiver in the league right after that. I'm sorry. You do not make someone's ADP rise as high as it did purely off of one game. And on top of it, one game that was against a team that's in the bottom 6 at that position that season. If that would have been done against a defense like the Rams or another team that had a great secondary, I would feel more comfortable, but not against the Chiefs.
I, I get it. I mean, it was one game. And I'm just such a big Stephon Diggs guy too. I feel as if we forget how dominant he was 2 years ago. And I mean, he was still awesome last year, but he didn't have as many touchdowns as some people necessarily hoped. But there's no reason it can't go back the other way. And we're talking about all these weapons though on the Bills, and you know you have Diggs and then everyone else. You know, there's another wide receiver core kind of like that if you take away the long-term injuries, and that's New Orleans Saints. You want to tell us what you're going to bring up there, Mike?
So the Saints have some good wide receivers, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the guy who's going to get them the ball. And I know we've been talking about season outlook. In this one, I don't care what the season tells me. I'm caring about this week and this week only in week 1 because they're playing the Atlanta Falcons, who are in the bottom 5 against wide receivers and against quarterbacks in points given up in fantasy last year. On DraftKings, he is only at 5,300 on DraftKings. For GPP, for tournaments, if I'm going to play a little bit, but I've been looking at some stuff. I put a lineup together last night just for the show that had him at quarterback and Dameon Pierce at running back because obviously he's going to be lower priced because of the prices for week 1 were set earlier in the summer. And then I let the optimizer pick the rest. It had Jamar Chase. It had Kyle Pitts. It had Travis Kelce. It had Jonathan Taylor. If you don't have to use Dameon Pierce, but if you can get a discount at quarterback, and another lineup I saw matched him up with one of the wide receivers and Michael Thomas, because Michael Thomas is still a little bit cheaper this week. If they can execute, they're going to get Kamara the ball. They're going to pass it to Kamara. They're going to give – I love one of their wide receivers in Olave. You got Michael Thomas. I just think this is a perfect week to use Jameis Winston, because there's going to be weeks that he is going to bust. We all know that. Jameis is going to be a boomer bust guy. So Jameis, to me, is a perfect guy for best ball and for daily. Not as much season. I do like him. I have him as like a second quarterback in a couple super flex and a backup. But other than that, that's what I have to say about Jameis. What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I'm with you on having Jameis as an option. I definitely think this is going to be the best receiving core the Saints offense has had in several years. You got Olave, like you mentioned. There's Jarvis Landry, Michael Thomas. He's suffering through an injury right now. Hopefully he gets healthy. But having Jameis last year, Jameis was one of the game manager type quarterbacks. He had a couple of games with big touchdown games, but not a lot of yardage. He was very efficient. I can expect him to be more. I would expect him to be more efficient. It's just a matter of how much the offense or coaches trust him to kind of air it out. Obviously, you have Kamara and Mark Ingram in that running game, so they're going to rely on them to a certain degree. So I'm big on Jameis. Particularly, I like to get him in two quarterback leagues. If I could get him as my second quarterback, I'm happy with that. When do you guys kind of, I guess, draft Jameis, if at all?
Can't say I do. I mean, I look at him as a 5 touchdown or 5 interception kind of guy.
Yeah.
I don't know which one's coming on what week. If it's not DFS, I want him as my third QB because it's a bye week or something else in a super flex. Otherwise, if it's one QB and I'm playing flyer for my bye week, I'll consider it depending on the matchup. But that's about it. I don't trust him in too many settings.
So you guys don't think that the Saints offensive has got him out of that turnover prone mentality. I mean, he isn't playing for Bruce Arians anymore, where he's just throwing it down the field all the time. Even though he was squinting and he couldn't see, looked like he could never see anything, but he was still throwing it down the field.
I think the important thing to remember there, though, is that this is no longer Sean Payton. This is, the guy who had a very bad record as a head coach formerly. And I get he was most recently under Payton, but, from time to time we've seen coaches, try and install that same mentality, but they also kind of do things different and it doesn't necessarily translate.
Right.
I do like their weapons. I do like their defense. But when it comes to Jameis, I'm not going to trust it. And Jameis Winston, I'm speechless. I'm not. You guys can react to that one. I will take TB12.
I don't think it'll happen. I'd only think that happens if TB12 falls off the cliff, but I don't think that's going to happen. Before we get into your next topic, Zach, let's do this as a panel really quick. We'll just throw it around. John has a question. Can you tell me if I have a good lineup? He has Murray, Henry. His receivers are Diggs, Debo, Waddle. He has Pitts. I mean, Murray, having Henry. I don't know who your other running backs are, but Diggs, Debo, and Waddle. He has Diggs and Debo. He has Waddle in his flex, so it's a two wide receiver. Hey, if those are your 3 starting wide receivers, that's great. And then you have Pitts.
Okay, sorry. No, I was just reading the other comment. He said top 12 for Jameis, not better than TB12. Okay,
got it. That makes more sense.
Yeah. But continue.
I don't think that either, but
Yeah.
So Jordan, what do you think about this team, really quick, before we jump back over?
So I like it. 9 PPR. I mean, he's more of a PPR guy, but it's definitely Derrick Henry is probably top 2, I would say, in 9 PPR. So I like this lineup.
I almost regret picking Derrick Henry as one of my subjects now because I think I might have a complete opposite. I like the wide receivers. I like Kyle Pitts. Do not like Kyler Murray, and I do not like Derrick Henry.
Oh, you have to explain why not Kyle.
Yeah, or no, I'm getting there. No, yeah, those wide receivers and the tight end I love, but man, Derrick Henry, he had an injury last year. I mean, his yards per attempt, yeah, yards per attempt last year were regressing. There
Mhm.
was regression prior to the injury. Then there's an injury. Plus, hey, they lost AJ Brown. I get they brought in Robert Woods. They have Traylon Burks, but I thought we were going to see more from Tannehill last year. That was kind of the year the expectations were a little higher, and those surely weren't great. I don't have high expectations for the Titans this year. I get they were a 1 seed last year, and it's going to be a bruising AFC conference this year. Like it's tough because there's so many good teams, and they're all going to have to lose because they play so many other good QBs. But man, I don't trust Henry at this point. It's partially concerned about injuries. It's partially concerned about, is there true regression? If through 2 weeks he looks like same old Derrick Henry, then I think you have I think you have a top two back for the whole year. But it's just I need a little bit of sample size this year to really have a firm grasp of what he is. And I guess that's where I don't have many shares of him due to where he's at right now. And Kyler, I just don't trust that with DeAndre's out 6 games. He primarily targets DeAndre.
True.
Hollywood, I don't know how that's going to mesh. I, there's too many variables, and I just don't like the head coach. But
Yeah.
hey, Kyler early in the year is always the best time to have Kyler because usually later in the year is when he gets hurt, and then has this lingering injury that hampers his production.
So
But
speaking of AFC South running backs, Zach, give it to us.
I might have been low on one, but I'm the exact opposite on another. He might be on another question. Will this running back I'm about to mention, is his team going to have a better record than Derrick Henry's team this year?
Don't bring that up yet. It might come up later.
But I think they are both not going to be great. But I love Travis Etienne. Obviously he got hurt last year, but I think there's a lot of opportunity coming his way. He's got the chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. Obviously they have a lot of wide receivers. They have Marvin Jones. They brought in Christian Kirk. They brought in a few other guys. I mean, they traded away Lavisca, which was necessary at this point. They brought in Evan Ingram, but I still think the primary guy that's getting these dump passes will be Travis Etienne.
Yep.
Trevor Lawrence's big downfall in year one was his vision. And I think that's going to be where more often than not, he just regresses back to just trying to find Travis and dumping off to him rather than turning the ball over. I'm optimistic for a better year two for Trevor, but I love Travis. And yes, like someone mentioned, J Rob, but he's coming back from an Achilles. That's a big injury. And also, they were very aggressive in taking Travis Etienne. When you draft a running back, he's essentially a first rounder in running back terms. Like they don't really often go in that literal first round. So the Jags were really high on him. And with that kind of draft equity, I'm looking at Travis being healthy, them really trying to utilize him however they can. So I love Travis. I think he's a great price too. His projections are low right now on Sleeper, but I just did a draft the other day and there's a lot of running backs going before him. And I think he has really great upside, especially in PPR leagues. Jordan, what's your thought on Travis?
I'm with you. Travis is from my neck of the woods in Louisiana, and I had a chance to watch him in high school. He was explosive then. Obviously, it translated to Clemson, and now in the NFL. It looks like he's showing some burst in camp. They were raving about him throughout the summer and stuff like that. I think James Robinson won't be fully healthy, as somebody said. I don't believe he'll be healthy. Any running back in particular coming back from an Achilles, it takes some time. It might be next season until if we ever see James Robinson from his height again. So I with that being said, I think Trevor Lawrence and Etienne played together in college. They have that chemistry already. Doug Peterson is somebody who he uses multiple running backs. So James Robinson is not going to go away. He's not going to vanish or anything like that. He'll still be involved, but I just don't know if his explosiveness will be back yet. And if it's one thing that the Jaguars are lacking, it's like electricity in the offense. And I believe that ETN brings that. I mean, you bring in Christian Kirk, who he can make some big plays, but I don't think anyone is as much of a playmaker on that offense as ETN. So I expect them to draw up creative ways to get him the ball in space and things like that. He's not going to get 20 carries in the backfield just handing the ball off. If you're drafting him for that, then that's not what you're going to get.
But yeah, you do 12, 15 carries a game and 5 to 8 targets a game.
Yes.
That's how I'm looking at him. But Jamie mentions ETN finishes week 1 as a top 5 RB and surprises all the haters. I'll go a step further. I mean, I think he might finish the year at RB5, RB6, kind of in that range. That's the upside there, especially for the price. And that's where, back to what I alluded to with Gabriel Davis, if I can get ETN, who I think has the upside of being in that top tier, but I'm drafting him way lower, I'm taking upside with a safe floor. And those are the kind of picks I love. But Mike, what are your views on ETN?
Zach, you have heard me all summer. Do I have to add anything? Because you know what? Give them to me, baby. Give them to me now. I love Travis Etienne. You already know this. It's going to be a Travis Etienne show for sure. So I am up next, and I am not going to bring up a certain player. I'm going to bring up a team. And it's not because who they're playing, Zach, specifically. And that team is the Minnesota Vikings. And yes, they're playing the Green Bay Packers. And I'm bringing this up because Green Bay is a good defense. But the main reason I'm bringing this up is their new coach, Kevin O'Connell, is from the Sean McVay tree. We saw it with Zach Taylor. It took a couple years with Zach Taylor. But Zach Taylor, when he first got to Cincinnati, he didn't have quite the talent that Kevin O'Connell has. So I'm looking to see how Kirk Cousins does. He was under Kevin O'Connell at one point in Washington. Dalvin Cook is a beast. You got one of the top trios in wide receivers in the league. I'm not saying they're like the number one trio, but when you can throw out Jefferson, Thielen, and KJ Osborne as a 3 is not a bad thing to happen. And I still believe this is the last year I will believe in him, but I still believe in Irv if he can get the targets. I know
Don't you
Zach.
give up on him after this year. He's
got to do something. He's got to show something, though, is all I'm saying. But the Green Bay Packers are a perfect test. I'm picking Green Bay in this game, but they're a perfect test for the Vikings in week 1 to see what Kevin O'Connell can bring out and what kind of plays he does. One of the things I've brought up in other shows this summer is last year, Cooper Kupp was in the slot 60-something% of the time. Justin Jefferson was in the slot 32.3, I believe, somewhere around there. I believe that they're going to give Jefferson the ball more in the slot, put KJ Osborne on the outside more, have KJ and Thielen on the outside, put Jefferson in the slot, move them around in the plays to give him the matchup that's going to help him. You still have Dalvin Cook. You still have Madison, even though there's rumors that he's going to get traded. I think Ty Chandler is going to be a part of this offense by the end of the year, even if, given a little bit of a break here or there. Just like we were mentioning with ETN about he's not going to get 20 carries, Jordan. I'm not saying Dalvin's going to get as little as ETN, but I think they're going to drop his carries a little bit to get him more involved in the passing game because that's what Kevin O'Connell likes to do. Zach, what do you think about them going against your team, and what can that prove?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this game. Forget the fact that I'm a Packer fan, just from a standpoint of being a fantasy football junkie and, loving to watch good football. I think this is a great matchup with a lot of things that are being tested all at once. You have this revamped offense. They finally got rid of Zimmer, who would refuse to pass the ball more until it was too late in the game. They brought in this new system that fits more like the Rams. They have the weapons to match that as well. Then you have the Packers who have their best defense, if not better than the 2010 season when they won the Super Bowl. So, I think it's going to be a really fun game. I'm curious to see how productive the fantasy players are, but I think we'll learn a lot about both the Packers defense, or actually both sides of the ball for both teams,
Mhm.
because I think this is a perfect opportunity with someone like Zadarius Smith going over to Minnesota, where you're really going to see, you know, dump and dive passes from Rodgers, these short little routes where they're just trying to exploit whatever corner is messing up on the quick routes, but otherwise it's going to be ground and pound. And I would be surprised to really see a high pass volume from Green Bay, let alone a shootout. And I think that's where I think whoever gets probably to high 20s or breaks the 30 mark will win that game. Like, I am not expecting whatever the over is. I'm probably leaning more in favor of that under. What do you know what the over is, Mike?
I'll find out right now.
Okay,
Jordan,
yeah.
what do you got while I find out the over?
Yeah, with week one, I feel like you can find interest in every single game on the slate, and this Minnesota and Green Bay game is even higher interest for me. But you know, I think with the weapons and the new offensive philosophy, that just has me more excited about taking Kirk Cousins. I know that sounds kind of crazy being excited for somebody like Kirk Cousins, but I think he's somebody who I've been finding myself getting in a lot of two quarterback leagues. That's my second quarterback, and I'm happy with that. I think KJ Osborne takes a little bit of a step forward this year. Not a lot to eat into Thielen or Jefferson, but if Thielen goes down, I think KJ Osborne could be something serious. Looking at their offense, I agree. I think Dalvin will probably get less work in the rushing game, and maybe that may be to give Madison some more work just to keep Cook fresh. But either way, I think Cook will still be involved in the passing game. I like him where he is. I like a lot of I even like Irv Smith. This is the last year that I'm buying in on him just to see what he can do because the talent is there. It's just injuries. He's had bad luck. So this Viking offense, I expect it to be really explosive, and I'm looking forward to it.
And
Yes.
Mike, what was the over?
So the over is set right now at 47 even.
Ooh, good old Vegas, putting it right on that fringe, just right.
It's gonna be 50.
Huh?
It's gonna be around 50.
But still, that's right in that range where
It is. It's in that. Yeah. I
not
don't know if
wanna
I would touch it. I don't know if I would touch
Yeah.
it.
No, I would not, because that I could see
Yeah.
that being a 20-17 game
Yeah.
too. But no, I mean, we're talking about these running backs though too, with Madison, Ty Chandler. How much will they take into effect in regards to Delvin Cook's workload? I have to ask the same for the next guy we're about to talk about, Jordan. You have Gus Edwards. I mean, Tyler Batty was considered, but I mean, I believe he got cut during the
Yeah.
roster cuts. What do you got to say about J.K. Dobbins?
I don't know what to expect out of JK. At first, I wasn't even sure if he would be ready. Like if he would be on a pup list or something. The way it was looking out in the summertime, it looked like he could have been placed on the pup list, but obviously he did. That didn't happen. So therefore, he'll be ready within the first 4 games. Maybe not week one. He's adamant that he'll be ready, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. However, I expect when he's healthy, whatever week that'll be, I expect this Ravens offense to go back to the more run heavy scheme that it was prior to before last season. No, no, was it? Very good. I was going into last season, I feel like they were more run heavy, which led to Lamar winning MVP and stuff like that. I think going into this season, they'll try to get back to that. Last year with Dobbins out, Gus Edwards out, and a who's who cast of running backs, they had to throw more. But I think they'll be going into this season. There, I'm looking forward to them getting back to that and for Dobbins to be solid. I've gotten him in the 6th round of a couple of drafts, and I think that's a good value for him. If you a guy that's averaged 6 yards a carry when he's right, I don't think that'll be his career his career mark or anything like that. I don't think that's sustainable. Obviously, he did it in his only season healthy. But even if he's down to 5 yards a carry, with Lamar Jackson as your quarterback, they're gonna have the rushing lanes. With him, it's all about health. With that offense, and if he is healthy, however, that kind of eats into. I feel like it kind of eats into Mark Andrews a little bit because they won't be as pass heavy. Uh, Andrews and Bateman on the outside a little bit like that. Luckily, those are pretty much the only 2 pass catching options that you really want to key in on. So with that offense, I'm looking at if Dobbins is healthy, all systems go, running game intact. Dobbins is a top 24 type running back. If he isn't right and they have to play the first couple of weeks with Kenyon Drake and Mike Davis, I think Lamar Jackson might put up a couple of big passing yardage games. Mark Andrews is going to get his as well as Bateman. So it's all about health. And I think obviously by the end of the season, Dobbins should be healthy. So they'll be running through people like they were in Lamar's MVP year. What do you kind of think about the Ravens offense, Mike, and what to expect?
So I am not sure about J.K. Dobbins personally, like as J.K. I think that offense is going to be okay, but I just don't know if J.K. is going to come out right away and be the J.K. that we thought he could be last year before the injury. I think there's a reason they brought in. I know Batty's gone, but I know they wouldn't have signed Kenyon Drake if they thought he was going to be the guy that we all thought he would be. I think it's going to be Mike Davis at first. That offense as a whole, Mandrews, I mean, Mark Andrews is just a beast. I think Bateman's going to be more involved this year. They got, they have Prochet, they have Duvernay. The one to look out for me, and this is me partly being a homer, but I don't care at this point. I think Demarcus Robinson is going to sneak in a little bit of a role. I'm not saying fantasy relevant, Zach. I'm just saying in that offense. But we all know this is the Lamar show. And this team's going to go, this offense is going to go as Lamar's going to go. Is he going to go for his contract and just try not to get hit and this and that? Or is he going to go try full gusto and break out and go, balls to the walls? That division is a very weird division to me. And they're one of the enigmas. I think it's either them or Cincy that wins. But it all depends on Baltimore to me more than it depends on Cincinnati.
Yeah, similar to last season, I think it's just health. And like one of the users said, they signed Drake because Gus Edwards won't be available, I believe. And it just kind of I saw somewhere somebody mentioned like the Mike Davis and Kenyon Drake situation is kind of like Devontae Freeman and Latavius Murray, where it's like Davis isn't the better back. I don't believe he's better than Kenyon Drake at this point in time, but he's the person who's been in camp, knows the offense more than Drake, so he'll get the first crack at it. But it wouldn't surprise me if JK is out for an extended period of time if Drake ends up being better move forward.
I'm going crap on the J.K. Dobbins parade. I'm here for it.
Come on, Zach. I already know, Zach. Go ahead.
It's not J.K. Dobbins. It really isn't. I can't deny the talent that was there when he was drafted so highly. And, obviously there's some injury concerns, but for me, it's the offense. It's the fact that they always want to utilize so many backs, get different looks, and that's what concerns me the most, is just the fact that, talent alone, the guy that I think deserves to be the workhorse back and get all the love from that offense is J.K. Dobbins, hands down. I'm just not confident that the workload's there, and that's what concerns me. I know you could say the same thing about someone I was high on earlier with Travis Etienne, but for me, it's more so due to the fact that we've watched Baltimore in so many different iterations with so many different running backs just spread the love to so many guys where you're like, wait, he's on the waivers in how many of my leagues? And then suddenly it's a different guy on the waivers the next week. It's the fourth stringer that's suddenly getting the RB2 for their team workload that next week, and they just kind of rotate depending on who kind of matches up better. But yeah, from a talent standpoint, I love Dobbins. From a overall workload and offensive scheme standpoint, Dobbins scares me. But I just blame Harbaugh and I blame Baltimore for that because Dobbins has all the talent to just be eaten up by everyone. And I mean, I would be so high on him if he wasn't in Baltimore.
So I think, like I said, the last time we saw him his rookie year, he averaged 6 yards a carry, and I think they were using multiple guys because he was a rookie. They were trying to get him acclimated to the NFL. So I think that was partly the reason why you saw a bunch of guys they didn't completely give him the keys his rookie year. And then last year, their top two running backs were out the whole season. So that's why they had to use all those other guys. But I think they invested the draft capital in Dobbins. If he's healthy, I expect them to get the bulk of the workload. And in that offense, that's very valuable. The thing that I didn't expect to see from Lamar Jackson last year was the amount of times he checked down to the running backs. If he consistently does that with Dobbins, because we don't expect Dobbins to have many receptions, but if Lamar does what he did last year with Freeman and guys like that, if he does that with Dobbins, Dobbins could show some untapped potential in the passing game as well, and his value could shoot up a little bit more.
And I get it's the rookie year I'm wearing a reference, but I mean, I'm looking at that 2020 season and, you've got, what is it? 144 rushing attempts for Edwards, 134 for Dobbins, 72 for Ingram. And then the year before that, 2019, obviously Dobbins isn't there, but you're having the distribution again. 202 to Ingram, 133 to Edwards, 107, or like obviously we'll leave out Lamar's, but 58 for Justice Hill. They're always finding ways to get more reps to guys that realistically shouldn't be getting reps at all. Like I get it if there's injury, and I'm not discrediting those players' talent, but it's from the standpoint of, hey, you've got like Kenyon Drake is a solid backup. Like it should be those two, Dobbins, and then if you want to rest them, bring in Drake. Or you want a different look for a specific play, bring in Drake. But otherwise, Dobbins. If it was just like that, I would love Dobbins. And that's where, yeah, my slander is nothing to do with JK himself. It's only from the standpoint of
offense.
Can you feed the mouths of the talented dudes, please?
Yeah.
And they never do.
So before we get to the next topic, I just want to say thanks to everyone that's come in. David, I know it's one of the first times you've been in here. Jamie's in here. Gator's in here. Some other guys are in here. We got Gator mentioning right here that backfield is like New England or Miami. I agree, but I have better thoughts about Miami. I think that's more like New England, or even I think what you're saying, Zach, in my opinion, what you're saying is going to be more. I think the Raiders are going to be more like Baltimore and New England this year than people think, but that's a whole nother story. So just like some teams, Baltimore's got guys that can get the ball. JK's coming off an injury. Zach, I know you want to talk about a guy that's coming off of injury with a team that's got some weapons that if he gets the ball, he can be dynamite. Take it away.
It's a sleeper pick. When I say, hey, keep your eye on this guy, I'm not telling you he's wide receiver 5 on the year, but right now on Fantasy Pros, he's wide receiver 76. And there has been enough flashes of potential where if he stays on the field with Carson Wentz at quarterback, Curtis Samuel can give you some great value. Through other bigger name guys that you're going to depend on more often if they get injured or through bye weeks. He's a great stash piece that you can get late in drafts. You don't even have to look at him at round 12, 13, 14. He's usually there deep in the draft. You're not spending a lot to get him, but I think there is plenty of potential. I get why there's the distaste for him. I'm part of it, I've kept him on one or two teams, but that's a guy I tried to trade away for the most part. But at the same time, in a couple of these leagues where the waivers are not terrible, not great, I'm looking at him, I'm like, I don't know if I want to cut him. I see more upside from him than some of the people out there. Like, do I know what the floor is? Not necessarily. I know the talent of some of their other weapons, yes, and I know Curtis Samuel doesn't compare in that regard, but at the same time, I don't trust Antonio Gibson. I mean, that dude fumbles all the time. They brought in a quarterback with Carson Wentz. I know look, I'm not here to defend Carson Wentz. No one is, okay? But is he an upgrade over last year? Yeah. And hey, he's going to throw the ball a little bit more. So from that standpoint, let me see what Curtis can do. Let me see if he can be healthy. And if he gets hurt again, hey, if it's say it's a 16th round pick, you didn't really invest much. If he gets hurt and you're disappointed, I'm sure there's a guy on the waivers that'll easily fill that spot for you. But Curtis Samuel is someone that I'm definitely keeping a close eye on because I think he can be undervalued. I'm not going to project, a wide receiver 20 or 30 finish, but if he's healthy all year and he's getting wide receiver 2 targets, I could see him, being in the wide receiver 40 range rather than in the 70s. And I mean, if he jumps up that much, I mean, that's already great value from the standpoint of where you're getting him. What are your guys' thoughts?
Go ahead,
Uh,
Jordan.
Yeah, I agree. Curtis Samuel honestly hadn't really been on my radar much, but with the minimal amount of investment you need to have in him, I mean, why not take a shot on a post hype? Because he was really hyped up in Carolina and even last year. There was a lot of hype on him. So maybe, following all the hype that he may live up to, what if he lives up to anything where you're getting him at? I mean, it's a plus. So
Yeah.
do I believe that Carson Wentz can support um, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dodson, and the running backs, J.D. McKissick, as well as maybe Logan Thomas if he's healthy, along with Samuel? I'm not sure, but I mean, if they use him out of the backfield like they intended to do a lot in Carolina and stuff like that, he could get some value there. So, I mean, hey, it's a low risk, possible high reward to get somebody that late. So, I mean, I'm for it.
And it's on a team where, outside of Gibson at some point, McLaurin at some point, Dotson, no one's really looking at that team for fantasy production. I
Right.
know Brian Robinson as well, but
Yes, I forgot about
I
him.
mean, Curtis Samuel it's just a under the radar, low risk, low or high reward. I mean, hey, why not? And sometimes those are the differences that win you leagues. That guy that is in the late rounds and can give you 1 or 2 good weeks when it matters most. Hey, I had Jarrett Patterson last year also for Washington where didn't do anything for me most of the year, but he was getting that RB1 reps during the championship weekend, and that changed my league. Mike, what are your thoughts on this? You're shaking your head. I see you.
So I like Curtis Samuel. I liked Curtis Samuel when he was out of Carolina and coming out of school. It's not it's not forgotten by me that his coach in Carolina, who in my opinion did not use him right, is the coach in Washington now. In my opinion, the problem is 2 things: a little bit of Wentz, but not. I'm just saying it's a little bit of Wentz, but I'm not trying to sit there and say he is the biggest problem. To me, the biggest problem for Curtis Samuel is Ron Rivera and just that offense. They just don't use their players right, in my opinion, at certain points. They haven't used Terry right, in my opinion. Who's to say if in my opinion, they haven't used McLaurin right? They go out and draft Dotson, who I love Dotson coming out of the draft class.
Same.
I think he was a good pick. I think he's going to be a stud. I don't know if he's going to have a great rookie year, but in Dynasty, Zach, that I was trying to grab him up in all my leagues. But my point is, if I can't trust him coach-wise to put their number 1 wide receiver in positions to succeed, how can I expect him to put their wide receiver 3 in positions to succeed? That's my issue.
I get it.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. No, go ahead.
It's scary. I mean, just that offense, that coaching staff, that quarterback situation, it's not sexy, it's not fun, but that's where the gems really are. When you get deep into the fantasy stuff, that guy on the team where it's like, I'm not seeing it. And I like Dotson. I get the excitement and the hype. It's there for a reason. He showed some flashes during the preseason and during camps. I'm excited about him. I think Samuel will end as the wide receiver 2 for the team this year, but I think that's the end of it. I think after that, his best situation's wide receiver 3, but I think it's the wide receiver 2 this year is, a 60-50, 60 to 55 on targets between him and Dotson. It's a close second and third, but if he can give me 45 receptions and 600 yards, that's great value there. So I wanted to make sure people are maybe keeping their eye out for him in those late rounds.
Oh no, I totally get that.
But
So
go ahead.
No, so I was just gonna say now that we've talked about one NFC East team, I know Jordan down there wants to bring up another NFC East team, but I will preface it by saying, at least it's not the Dallas Cowboys. Go ahead, Jordan.
Absolutely. It's not the Dallas Cowboys. It is the Philadelphia Eagles. They are an intriguing offense to me for a couple of reasons. One, Jalen Hurts is a quarterback that I've seen a lot of people be very high on. I'm even high on it myself, but I'm kind of tempered with it just because I'm not sure what type of Eagles offense are we going to see this year. Obviously, they added A.J. Brown, so I expect them to throw the ball a little bit more when you bring in a stud like that and you give them the money that they gave him. However, when they went to more of the run-oriented offense in the second half of the season, they actually won games. They were like 7-1 or something like that after the first couple of weeks of the season with Jalen Hurts slinging it around. They were losing. So I'm trying to figure. I want to know exactly what kind of offense I'm investing in. I would expect Hurts looked really good in the preseason, and again, obviously, it's preseason, so you can't really take too much of that. But I mean, he went 7 for 7 or 8 for 8 or whatever. He looked really good. So if that's a snippet of what we can see, if he's more accurate, if he's making better decisions with the ball, being able to read the defense, and the coaches trust him enough to put the ball in his hands more, I expect them to live up to the QB6 or the top 10 quarterback that he's ranked right now. So that Dial, you don't agree? However,
no, look at that comment.
Yeah. Running back, that's tricky. I was a big fan of Miles Sanders a couple of years ago. I took him in the first round, a couple of drafts. That was stupid of me. However, this year he's fallen a lot, but I'm still not sure if the offense, if the coaches believe in him enough to give him a full workload. I don't think he will. He's been the more explosive back between Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, but for whatever reason, Boston Scott, when he has the job to himself, he gets the majority of the work. It's the Eagles' offense is crazy to kind of decipher. Obviously, it's going to be Goddard and A.J. Brown probably as the top two targets, with Devontae Smith a close third, in my opinion. But I think this offense will be significantly better through the air. Not sure how many more pass attempts they'll have. I'm expecting them to throw more, and if they do, I really, really like Hurts. But if they're running the ball and winning games like they were last year, it's hard for me to believe that Hurts can be the top 5 quarterback that everybody thinks it can be if they're going to be sticking it in the running back's guts. And he'll have some rushing touchdowns. Obviously, he provides value with his legs. But if he wants to truly get to that upper echelon of quarterbacks, he has to be able to show us that he can be consistent through the air. And that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing.
All right, so I'm going to keep mine short because I know somebody else wants to speak. Basically, when it comes to the running game, I'm a Kenny Gainwell guy. I did like Miles Sanders, but I just think that they're going to use too much of a committee, though. That's the issue for me. They're not going to use enough of one guy, kind of like what Zach was saying about Baltimore, in the sense that you got Gainwell, you got Sanders, you can't rule out Boston Scott. And for some weird reason, is Trey Sermon going to be a thing? There's just something telling me that, I'm not saying he's going to be like the number one back, but there's just something telling me that he is going to do something. Jalen Hurts, I'm not the biggest fan of, but he does score. He is a good fantasy quarterback, and he's a Konami code. The guy that I like in this offense is Dallas Goedert. Other than that, Go ahead.
Let me bring this right here. So
I know.
let's
I'm just going to step back and
let me
relax.
just say something. We talk about Tua. Can he do it? Is he the answer? Oh, they brought in this other weapon to see if he's the answer. Philly did the same exact thing. Look, Jalen Hurts, fantasy football MVP. I could see that. MVP in real life. Oh, he's going to have to prove a whole hell of a lot. Because guess what? There were some great fantasy games last year that I absolutely loved. There were, I mean, even his bad weeks were good. I mean, he's a great fantasy QB. But at the same time, I'm looking at him this year, and from the Philly perspective and what their moves were this offseason, I looked at it as, is he our QB going forward? I love him in redraft this year. I like, don't get me wrong. This year with these kind of weapons, take Jalen Hurts. I love the production you'll be able to get. But at the same time, I don't know if I could take him at the price for Dynasty because for me, I'm not sold on the fact that he's their long term solution at QB. They're investing into these weapons. They're going to have to pay Devonta Smith at some point. I know he's got a couple years. They're paying AJ Brown now. They're going to pay Dallas Goddard too. I know they've already got him for a couple years, but they're paying these weapons. And teams that do that are teams that don't have a solidified QB usually. Because we see all these other teams just let go of their wide receivers when they're like, hey, we got our guy. We only need to invest in usually one top tier option in the receiving game. And I think Philly's saying, hey, we got to know now. This is really important to figure it out this year. Because remember, Jalen Hurts, he wasn't a first round QB. They don't have that fifth year option either. So they need to know going into next year, because that's going to be his final year of his rookie deal, is he worth it or not? Is he the guy that, hey, we're going to pay him $45 million a year to compete with all those other top tier QBs because that's what you have to pay any respectable QB at this point? Or are we going to let some other team that doesn't have a QB at all take him while we go a different route through either a veteran that we can sign for cheaper than what Jalen Hurts would want, or are we going to go into the draft in either this 23 or 24 class with a lot of good QBs? So right now, Jalen Hurts this year for fantasy, sign me up. Dynasty, no thank you. I got to see it this year, and I got to see, not the fantasy production aspect, but I got to see the other intangibles that I don't get fantasy points for to really believe in him long term. Because right now, I don't even know if the Eagles front office believe in him long term.
And that's what it was like for me as a Jalen Hurts owner last year. You look at the fantasy, he was one of those guys I couldn't watch the game because he was so bad at times. You were happy with the points, the fantasy points, but in real life, watching him, it was painful to watch. So I'm hoping that he takes that step. With AJ Brown can't hurt, so I
Yep.
expect him to take a little step.
There's some other teams that really have some hurting at QB and can be ugly to watch from time to time. Mike, you want to tell us about two teams that weren't very fun to watch last year that you want to talk about?
So I believe you're talking about Jacksonville and Detroit. And here's my thing. I like to bet. I can't do it really in California, but that doesn't stop me from looking at the spreads. I'm sorry. I do it every week, even though I can't do it. But here we go. I got before the show started, I had 2 picks, but the line changed and now I got 3 picks. So here, one, and it's funny that 2 of the games we talked about the teams in 2. One is the Philadelphia Eagles against the Detroit Lions. It's a 4-point spread right now. The Lions are a 4-point underdog. Do I think they're going to beat the Eagles? No. But Detroit likes to bite some kneecaps. And last year, they were in some pretty close games. They got blown out by who last year? They got blown out by the Philadelphia Eagles pretty dang bad. I think it was like 40-7 or 40-10. Dan Campbell has not forgotten about that. I'm telling you right now. And we all know that teams plan all year, all offseason for that week 1. We know Dan Campbell and Deuce Staley. Deuce Staley's going back to Philly. We know he does not like what happened last year. One of my bold predictions, Zach, was that Jared Goff is going to be a top 15 quarterback. Do I think he's going to have a great game? No. Is he going to have a good game? Yes, because Philadelphia's defense isn't great. Yes, they got a couple rookies that are good, but Jared Davis needs to prove himself still. Nakobe Dean still needs to prove himself. They're a little weak on the back end. Their linebacking core was weak last year. So for that game, Lions are going to cover the 4 points. Jacksonville Jaguars was one of my bold predictions, Jordan, to win the division if things don't go right. Zach brought up earlier about Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans. I do not think the Tennessee Titans are as good as they were last year. Washington is struggling. They've had some stuff going on. Ron Rivera is Ron Rivera. It's a 2.5-point spread. Washington is favored 2.5. I'm taking Jacksonville plus 135 on the money line to win the game outright. And I just saw that the line moved. Indianapolis at Houston dropped to 6.5. Why? I don't know. I'm taking Indy by a touchdown. Jordan, what do you got? What do you think about that, or anything you want to bring up?
So I'm not a huge betting guy, but definitely I'm with you on Jacksonville beating Washington. I think Jacksonville will have the momentum. They're getting their running back, ATN, his first game, Lawrence and ATN together, Christian Kirk there. With Washington, their running back got shot. I think they have a few more problems to deal with right now, and things that they didn't expect. So I'm expecting Jacksonville to take it to them. Definitely. As far as Detroit and Philly, I agree. Watching some Hard Knocks has kind of made me a little bit of a fan of Dan Campbell, even though he says crazy stuff all the time. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense, but um, I definitely think the Lions, one thing that they'll do is they won't lay down. They'll be ready to play. So I think that I agree with you on that as well.
I like
Zach.
the bets. I appreciate them. I don't have really any counters, but I'm eyeballing a few of these games, and it's really tempting in a state where it's legal. Just slap in a parlay. I got a couple other picks I like there. A big one that stands out to me is the Bengals minus 6.5 against the Steelers. Why are we convinced that the Steelers are competitive? I get they have a good defense. I love TJ Watt. I love some of those pieces. They have some solid weapons, but they remind me of the Chicago Bears in a way, except if the Bears had a better defense. And the reason why I say that is the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah,
They're like they have the running back, they have the high upside tight end. Obviously, there's more options in the wide receiver core for Pittsburgh, but their offensive line is terrible. So regardless of if they have a good QB or a bad QB, it's going to be hell for that QB. Oh, and guess what? It's either Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. And don't forget the fact that Cincinnati, they made the Super Bowl. They weren't really, that was kind of their, coming up year. They weren't really supposed to reach that level yet. And they upgraded at their weakest points. So, minus 6.5 for Cincy, I love that. I'm not here to say Cincy's winning the whole damn thing this year. I'm not trying to get carried away, but playing against Pittsburgh week 1, it's a game where I think Cincy wants to come in and make a statement saying, "Hey, this is our division now, and we want to show you what's up." So I like that one a lot. And then what was the other one? Miami and New England was the other one where, oh, wait, someone else was mentioning. Let's see. Boston Strangler, Miami at home versus New England, minus 3.5. Yep, he gets it. That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm not the Tua guy, just like Jalen. I'm not the guy here to say, hey, they got it. but guess what? They've got the weapons. They've got enough defensive capability as well. And New England, like Thornton was supposed to be this big, awesome, up and coming guy. I was high on him. I was excited to see what he could do. Obviously, he broke his collarbone, so he's out for a bit. It's Devontae Parker. It's Jacoby Myers, who I like, but not for anything of value. That's where I'm looking at that game. -3.5 seems really kind of New England. I think that's the Belichick effect more than anything else.
Yes,
I mean,
yeah, hands down.
I look at Miami and that I like the matchups where week one it's a team trying to make a statement against their matchup. Someone where it's like, hey, we want to kick you in the teeth and tell you like this is our time now. We've got a lot of great division games this opening week. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Green Bay and Minnesota is another one. If obviously I'm a Packer fan, but if you are leaning more towards Minnesota, you're the one that thinks, hey, they're winning the division this year. I'd advise betting them +1.5. For me, yeah, I'm a Packer fan, but I think I don't want to touch it either way because
Mm-hmm.
I can see both sides so clearly, and that's just going to be one where I think you're almost better off staying away unless you firmly believe one way or the other that this team is winning that division.
So,
Jordan, you got any ideas on these lines we've mentioned?
Yeah, I think to address the Pittsburgh and Cincy one, I think those AFC North matchups are physical, and with any division matchups, really, you can throw records, you can throw what you did last year out of the window. It just always seems like those games are really close, and I think that's probably based on history. Like a lot of those games are fairly close, so that's probably why that line is. So I don't want to touch a lot of these games because it's just in week one, with a lot of these guys not really playing in the preseason, it's going to be a lot of sloppiness. There's going to be a lot of turnovers, probably penalties, things of that nature. So it won't be the best football we've seen. We're just going to be so happy to see it, see the stars out there. But I think that'll keep some of these games closer than they probably should be. The just some of the teams not being their sharpest.
Yeah, so right now we're right around an hour and 5 minutes, but it is time for the cheat of the week. So we will go through this a little bit quicker, but we all have a 1v1 topic about a team. It's funny that when we looked at the sheet and I saw this, I was like, all right, this is going to be a good cheat of the week. Zach, I know it's about your team, and Kyle just jumped into the chat. So what do you have to say to you, Jordan, Kyle, and all you other cheeseheads?
Not just the cheeseheads out there. Guess what? If you've got Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon in your fantasy lineup or on your bench, my advice is either start them in your running backs or start them in your flex. Put both of them in if you have both, but I think there's no reason to have either of them out of your lineup at this point. From everything I've read in camps and in preseason, and even from what we've seen last year, this is a team that is going to be a run first offense. Rodgers is going to be more of the game manager role. And they view these two running backs as 1A and 1B. They think they have two elite running backs, not just, hey, it's Aaron Jones and then Dillon will take over when he needs rest. They think both of these guys can be workhorse backs. So, I love AJ Dillon in redraft and in Dynasty because he's undervalued for what I think his production will be this year. Aaron Jones might be slightly overvalued or valued right at where he'll produce. But, it's not a who I think will produce more. But my cheat of the week is the fact that if you have one or the other, don't worry about the other one. Just put them in your lineup because this team is going to be a run first offense this year. And I highly advise just putting them in there because you'll regret it later. Now,
Yeah.
Jordan, I believe you have some other running backs you wanted to talk about. What do you got for us?
Yes, I opted to go to the difficult backfield route with Bill Belichick and the Patriots, Ramondre versus Damian Harris. So my perspective on this has changed over the last few months with what's happened with the Patriots backfield. At the beginning, I was more of a Damian Harris guy. I didn't really like him too much in full PPR or anything like that. But now that James White has retired, Ty Montgomery suffered an injury, and there have been reports that Ramondre could step into that James White role, which is very valuable, pass catching role for the Patriots. I'm more of a Ramondre guy. They're not going that far between each other in drafts now. Ramondre's moved up while Damian has moved down. So I prefer to get Ramondre just to have that passing down possibility. But both of these guys can bring back value in half or non PPR, I think, because I assume that towards the end of the year they were kind of splitting work more. Ramondre was getting more work as the season went on, and if he continues that trend while getting the passing down work, I just think he's more valuable in the PPR leagues. But um, you can have. I wouldn't want to have either both of these guys on the same team, but if you pick one of them, you're going to have a starting running back for sure. But I would rather have Ramondre if you're in PPR.
I
No,
completely
I
agree.
love it. I mean, I'm a big Ramondre guy myself. I think
Mhm.
there's more upside there. I took Damian Harris. I was just about to type in response to Kyle. He just said in the chat, I'm in 2 drafts tonight. I took Aaron Jones in one as a hero RB, and I took AJ Dillon as my RB3 in another. So I was in a redraft league last night. I got a little greedy at the running back position. I noticed there was a few teams letting guys slip. They're like, "Ooh, I like this wide receiver, that wide receiver." So I took Eckler in the first. I got DeAndre Swift in the second. Then I took I believe it was either the fourth round. I took Etienne, and then I also got AJ Dillon, and then I also got Damian Harris, and then I took Spiller later. But that was but I loaded up on the RBs because I said, hey, I'm going to just hoard them. Someone's going to need them. But I love Ramondre more than Damian, but I still think there's value there for Damian.
Yes.
And I think that's another one where it's going to suck benching either of them. It's tough with those 1A, 1B committee backfields where it's clearly just 2 guys. It's not 3 or 4 guys getting worked in, or like in Baltimore where you have one and then like 2, 3, and 4 that are kind of in another tier, but they all kind of get work. This is just 2 guys, and it's about I don't really know which one's getting the primary workload this week. Obviously, it's different with injury, but I think you can be successful with either of them. You probably just don't want to depend on too high of a ceiling from either of them, especially given, the lower expectations for the Patriots this year.
Offense as a
It's not like Green Bay where they might be playing some bad teams and we have higher expectations in regards to success. But for the final, roster battle or, versus matchup. Mike, what do you got for us? I know you wanted to steer away from the running backs with this one.
So I got Denver's Cortland Sutton versus Jerry Judy. And part of this is because what I have been saying all summer, Zach. So Jordan, on this one, all summer, I've even coming out of college, I've been a Jerry Judy guy. I still think Jerry Judy's a beast. Cortland Sutton's a beast. But with Russell Wilson coming in there, looking at more of the thing, at ADP at the beginning of the summer, I was thinking, I wanted Jerry Judy as the guy on that team. Zach, I have changed. I have gone to the dark side. If you made me decide right now, if I had to pick between Cortland Sutton and Jerry Judy, who I want on my fantasy team, for the first time this year, I would be telling you, give me Cortland Sutton. I still think Jerry Judy is going to be an integral piece in this offense if they're going to be successful, because Russ is going to cook, and to be successful, Russ is going to have to cook, and Russ is going to have to throw the ball. That AFC West is freaking wild, wild west out in the middle of nowhere with freaking just gunslingers and OK Corral. When you give them the matchups like the Raiders, and you give them matchups like the Chiefs twice a year and the Chargers twice a year, Russ is going to have to put up points to win. You're going to see games, in the 60s and over-unders. It's going to happen. So for me, Cortland Sutton is the guy to own. But if you end up with Jerry Judy, you should still be happy.
I'm proud of you. I've done the same. I've rotated away from Judy to Sutton. But in the process, I've also kind of ditched the Bronco hype train altogether.
Yeah.
I think they're coming in last this year. I'll just say that. I think they're the worst team in the division. I mean, them and the Raiders, they get to battle for third and fourth.
Yep. Yeah, I was the same way. I think Judy is a better player, I believe, but as far as for us, I think Cortland Sutton obviously has more touchdown upside, bigger body, stuff like that. So I have to lean Sutton as well.
If I'll say this though on Judy, if he puts in the work to really watch the ball into his hands, to ditch some of the dropping that he's struggled with throughout his career so far, I'll be a lot higher on him for the rest of his career. And
Yeah.
that's one thing. I've said it for Christian Watson and why I'm high on him. I'll say it for all these other wide receivers as well. If it's something like concentration drops where you just have to watch it through your hands and stay focused on the ball rather than cutting up field ahead when you don't even have the ball yet, something like that can be improved on. So if he does, I'll probably turn back towards Judy at some point. But for right now, Sutton's the more trusted option. I agree with you there, Mike.
All right.
Anything else for us, Mike?
Yeah, one quick thing before we end this show. I wanted you guys to I'm sprying this on the guys chat, and the guys don't know this yet. But since we're going to be recording on Tuesdays now, for the rest of the season, we're going to be keeping track of Thursday night picks just for the fun of it. So for the first game of the season is the Rams and Bills. So I'm going to drop it off to Jordan first. Give us where we can find you, sign off, and then give us your pick for the Thursday night game.
Well, you guys can find me on Twitter at jarsenal89. I know my name is kind of difficult to spell, but ARCENEAUX 89. And I think Thursday night I'm going with the Bills. I think Josh Allen comes through. Gabe Davis scores a touchdown. And I think the Bills win. But it'll be a very good game, close. Probably a shootout because that's just how it goes.
Go ahead, Zach.
You can find me on Twitter at the Big Pulowski. Otherwise, you can find me here and also every Sunday morning, pregame before first kickoff. I'll be with Gladys and Gerson and Jamie over there, doing some pregame start, sit, and then DFS stuff with Gerson. But no, it feels great to be back first and foremost. I mean, Mike, I know you weren't feeling well at one point. Then we had the expo, and then there was some scheduling difficulties. It feels like it's been 2 years, but it just feels good to be back. I'm glad to have Jordan with us now. I'm excited to be here every week instead of every other week.
Oh, yeah.
But my pick, first off, my pick for the real winner is going to be Amazon Prime, right? I mean,
Yeah, they are.
I'm excited for that. But on top of that, I got to go with the Bills. I think they're going to still kind of be haunted from how their playoffs ended last year. The Rams ended on that high note, and there's a lot of guys considering retirement. Donald, McVay, all these guys kind of like, hey, what's going on? And Stafford with these lingering arm issues, but supposedly he's good to go now. I wanna bet on the Bills, and I don't know by how much, but I think it'll be a very fun game. I mean, I don't think we could really ask for a much better kickoff game than this. I'm excited. Mike, who are you picking?
So you can find me at Drop the Mic FF. You can find me here Tuesday nights. Just like Zach said, I want to bring up the fact that it is exciting to have Jordan on the crew. It's exciting to be back every week. We will bring an exciting show for you every Tuesday. That's guaranteed. We love talking about football. Me and Zach have talked about football off and on air. So bringing Jordan on is awesome. You can also find me on Friday nights with the Rum Boys and sometimes during the other games. For the game, I am also picking the Buffalo Bills, but I am going to go one step further, not for the record, but just because I think it's funny. I think it's going to be close, and I think Von Miller is going to have something to do with the end of it. I don't know if it's a sack on Stafford. I don't know if it's a big stop, a strip, but I just have a feeling that Von Miller is going to get in there and do something against his old team. But so that's 3 picks against the Bills. I'm going to keep track of this on the side just for bragging rights at the end, because I know Zach and Jordan will love that too. So for Jordan and for Zach and for me,